Welcome to HFY Genesis. Today's story explores how humanity faced impossible odds in The Nemesis Has Arrived and Humans Show No Mercy. Buckle up, because this is a tale of defiance, resilience, and the raw fury of mankind unleashed against a cosmic threat. The first warning came in whispers. Ships, entire fleets, vanishing at the edges of known space. No wreckage, no distress signals, only silence. Then, the Nemesis arrived. The Galactic Accord had always considered humans problematic, too aggressive, too unpredictable, too unwilling to submit. When the Nemesis came, the rest of the galaxy cowered. But not humanity. Humanity didn't run. It didn't hide. It sharpened its knives. Admiral Cole Richter stood motionless on the bridge of the HSS Vengeance, his face cast in the eerie glow of holographic wreckage feeds. A dozen star systems, all reduced to ruin. Fleets vaporized. Colonies silenced. The once thriving hub of humanity's frontier expansion was now a graveyard. And the Nemesis had left nothing behind but the silence. The scent of recycled air and burning circuits filled the command deck. The ship trembled under emergency power fluctuations, damage reports scrolling across every interface. Behind Richter, Commander Lin spoke softly, her voice laced with exhaustion. "We have less than 12% of the Orion defense fleet accounted for." She paused. No distress signals, no survivors. Richter exhaled sharply. They were out there, somewhere. Millions of lives, erased. He closed his eyes, but the after-images of fire and destruction remained. His hands curled into fists. He had seen wars before. He had seen planets burn, had made impossible calls. But this was different. The Nemesis had not conquered Orion. They had consumed it. Echoes of the fallen. The holofeed shifted, displaying the last known transmission from the UES Atlas, a Mars-built battlecruiser assigned to the Orion perimeter. The recording was grainy, fractured by electromagnetic distortions, but the voices were unmistakable. "There's too many of them. We can't. They're inside the ship. They're inside." Signal lost. A moment of silence followed. Then a single haunting image flickered on screen. It wasn't Nemesis ships. It wasn't fire. It was something else, organic, twisting, a shadow against the ship's bulkheads, moving in ways that defied physics. Bodies, human bodies, contorted, wrong, their faces frozen in silent screams. Richter's stomach turned. He had been prepared for another war. He had not been prepared for this. Lin turned to him, her voice quieter now. "This isn't a war, sir." He nodded grimly. "It's an extinction event." The Accord betrayal. A new transmission flickered into view. This one live. It was Chancellor Virex of the Galactic Accord. Her feline-like features composed, but her silver eyes flickered with unease. "Admiral Richter," she began, her voice diplomatic, clipped. "The Accord has convened, and we have decided that containment is the best course of action." Richter narrowed his eyes. "Containment?" "Yes." She straightened, as if rehearsed. "We will restrict travel beyond the Orion borders, quarantine the affected systems. Humanity must not escalate this conflict." It took everything in Richter not to smash the console in front of him. His crew exchanged furious glances, but he kept his voice measured. "You want us to sit here? Watch while the Nemesis devours our colonies, our people?" Virex didn't blink. "If humanity retaliates with full force, we risk drawing the Nemesis deeper into the core worlds. We cannot allow—" Richter cut her off. "You've already allowed it. You let them take Orion. You abandoned the colonies. And now you think the storm will pass if you close your eyes." The Chancellor hesitated, just for a fraction of a second. Then, her tone hardened. "This decision is final. The Accord will not risk—" The transmission cut off. Richter exhaled. "They are leaving us to die." Lin's voice was cold, sharp. "Cowards." Richter turned to his crew. Open a direct channel to the UES High Command. His comms officer hesitated. Sir, if the Accord detects unauthorized transmissions, do it anyway, Richter snapped. A heartbeat later, the line connected. On the other end, General Vasquez appeared, his scarred face grim. Richter. A nod. I take it you've heard. Richter's jaw tightened. They're abandoning the front. Not they, Vasquez corrected. Just the cowards in the Accord. He leaned in, voice dropping to a dangerous whisper. We're mobilizing the Black Sky Armada, off the books. The Dreadforge initiative is fully active. A beat of silence. Lynn's eyes widened. Sir, that means... Richter nodded. The Oblivion Protocol. It was no longer about survival, it was about sending a message. The HSS Vengeance drifted above the ruins of Orion, the darkness stretching endlessly beyond. Somewhere, out there, the Nemesis was moving, growing, preparing for the next wave. Richter stared into the abyss and whispered, We're coming for you. The humans would not wait. The Nemesis thought they had burned Orion to silence. But from its ashes, a fire was rising. What would you do in Richter's position? Wait for the enemy to strike again, or take the fight to them first? The Last War Council. The war room beneath Titan Command was built to withstand planetary bombardment, but tonight it was filled with something far more destructive than any weapon: fear. The highest-ranking officials of the United Earth Systems, the Martian Directorate, and the Colonial Defense Coalition sat around the circular hollow table, their faces illuminated by the crimson glow of the Orion Extermination Report. It wasn't just a battle they had lost. It was an entire sector. A graveyard now, a sector burned so completely that it might as well have never existed. General Vasquez's voice shattered the silence. We deploy the Oblivion Protocol. Dr. Elias Corvin, lead scientist of the Dreadforge Initiative, went rigid. That is not an option. Across the table, Admiral Cole Richter leaned forward, his jaw tight. The hell it isn't. We lost Orion. The Accord has abandoned us. The Nemesis is 3 days from Sol. What exactly do you propose we do instead? Ask them nicely to leave. Dr. Corvin's fingers twitched, adjusting his glasses, a nervous tick. He had seen the simulations. He had built some of the weapons being considered. The Oblivion Protocol wasn't just a countermeasure. It was extermination. If we use those weapons, Corvin warned, we cross a line. The Accord may have left us to die, but if we deploy the protocol, we may never be able to come back from it. It's more than war. It's genocide. Richter met his gaze with cold, steel-blue eyes. You don't seem to understand. His voice was quiet. This isn't a war anymore. A heavy silence. Corvin swallowed. The protocol doesn't just wipe out enemy fleets. It consumes entire biospheres. If we deploy it, we won't just eliminate the Nemesis fleet. We will erase their entire species. General Vasquez folded his arms. Then we're in agreement. Corvin slammed his fist on the table. Are you even listening? His voice cracked with desperation. If we do this, humanity will become the very thing the Accord feared. We'll be labeled monsters. Richter stood. His voice was calm, measured, but beneath it there was something raw, something lethal. Corvin, listen to me very carefully. He walked around the table slowly, his words deliberate. The Nemesis did not come to negotiate. They did not come to conquer. They erased Orion. Men, women, children, gone. Not prisoners, not slaves, not even corpses. He leaned down until he was eye to eye with the scientist. Tell me, Doctor, what mercy did they show? Corvin opened his mouth, then closed it. He had no answer. Richter straightened. We didn't start this war, but by God, we will finish it. Another silence followed, but this time, no one objected. The vote Vasquez exhaled. We put it to a vote. A digital interface materialized above the holo table. 5 names, 5 choices. Deploy the Oblivion Protocol? Yes. No, Richter's finger hovered over the interface. In another life, maybe he would have hesitated. But hesitation was a luxury humanity no longer had. He pressed yes. Lynn, standing behind him, did the same. Vasquez followed, then the colonial defense delegates. 4 votes in favor. Corvin's hand shook as he made his choice. For a long, agonizing moment, the holo table registered no movement. Then, final vote, 5-0. Corvin slumped back into his chair, staring at the glowing display like it had just sentenced the universe itself. The Oblivion Protocol was now in effect. The storm before the fire Titan Command's war room emptied in the hours that followed. There were no celebrations, no speeches, just a quiet, dreadful acknowledgement of what was coming. Richter stood alone, staring at the massive tactical map of the Sol system. He felt Lynn approach before she spoke. "You did what you had to." He exhaled slowly. "Did I?" She didn't answer. Instead, she handed him a data slate. The first wave of the Black Sky Armada was already mobilizing. Hundreds of Dreadforge-class warships, each armed with weapons that should have never been created. "You know what the Accord will say after this," Lynn murmured. "Even if we win, we'll never be forgiven." Richter smirked. It was bitter, cold. Then they should have stopped us when they had the chance. Because now there was no turning back. Humanity has made its choice. But was it the right one? Would you have voted for the Oblivion Protocol, or sought another way? Let us know in the comments below. And don't forget to like and subscribe to HFY Genesis for more epic tales. On Fire, the Black Sky Offensive. The void of space was silent, cold, indifferent, but that night it burned. The Black Sky Armada, humanity's final answer, emerged from the darkness, their hulls matte black against the dying light of Orion's ruins. Each ship bore no insignia, no allegiance to the Galactic Accord, no diplomatic markings. These were not the fleets of a government seeking peace. These were war machines forged for vengeance. At their heart, the HSS Vengeance, humanity's deadliest warship, led the charge. On its bridge, Admiral Cole Richter stood motionless, staring at the massive Nemesis fleet assembling in the darkness ahead. They were an unholy force, shifting masses of alien warforms, their hulls pulsing with strange bioluminescence. They were waiting. The Nemesis had never known defeat. Tonight, they would learn. The call to arms. "Admiral, we are in position." Commander Lynn's voice was calm, professional, but beneath it, Richter could hear the tension, the storm before the strike. He nodded once. "Status on enemy movement? Multiple capital-class organisms," Lynn reported, fingers gliding over the holo-controls. "Over 200 warforms detected, estimated 50 Dreadnought-class vessels. Their formation is shifting, adaptive as always." Richter frowned. "They know we're coming." A voice crackled over the comms, General Vasquez relaying from the HSS Revenant. "Damn right they do. Doesn't change a thing." Richter exhaled slowly. "No, it doesn't." He turned to his weapons officer. "Load the Singularity Lances. Bring the Charybdis cannons online, and prepare the Hellstorm arrays." A ripple of acknowledgement spread through the bridge crew. No hesitation, no doubts. Because hesitation was death, and humanity had run out of time. Fire and fury. The Nemesis moved first. A ripple passed through their fleet, then hell broke loose. Dark tendrils of living ships surged forward, weapons charged with eldritch energy. They didn't fire missiles or laser beams like conventional fleets. Instead, space itself folded and cracked, unleashing jagged rifts of destructive energy. Nemesis weapons didn't just destroy, they erased. "Brace for impact!" Lynn shouted. Shockwaves ripped through the fleet, shields flaring bright as the first wave of Nemesis fire struck home. Smaller escort ships vanished in an instant, devoured by twisting anomalies. Even the HSS Vengeance shuddered under the assault, but the Black Sky Armada did not falter. "Return fire!" Richter bellowed. The counterstrike came like the wrath of a vengeful god. Singularity lances cut across the void, thin, piercing beams that ripped through Nemesis warforms, leaving nothing but collapsing implosions in their wake. The Charybdis cannons opened fire next, unleashing waves of quantum-destabilizing rounds that unmade matter upon impact. Then the Hellstorm arrays, humanity's most brutal invention: fire, plasma, kinetic slugs the size of city blocks. The void became an inferno. Nemesis warforms twisted and screeched as their bodies broke apart. Their formations faltered. Their strategy, adaptation, failed for the first time. Because they had never encountered an enemy like humanity. An enemy that did not retreat. An enemy that did not hesitate. An enemy that did not stop until there was nothing left to kill. The apex predators. "Multiple enemy dreadnoughts down," Lin reported. "Their fleet is fracturing." Richter's grip tightened on the rail. "They're trying to retreat." Across the battlefield, Nemesis warforms twisted away, attempting to slip into the void between dimensions. It was the first sign of something no one had ever witnessed before. The Nemesis were afraid. Richter leaned forward. His next words were cold. "Do not let them escape." The HSS Revenant moved into position, deploying gravity nets, immense fields of artificial mass that dragged Nemesis vessels back into real space. Ships thrashed against the invisible force, their biomechanical hulls cracking under the strain. Then humanity finished the job. The HSS Vengeance charged forward, delivering a final devastating volley. Nemesis dreadnoughts collapsed, torn apart at the molecular level, their remains drifting as smoldering ruins in the black. There were no prisoners. There were no survivors. There was only silence. And then, a single transmission flickered across the comms. A message. Not from the Accord. Not from another human fleet. From the Nemesis itself. A voice, distorted and unnatural, filled the bridge. It was not a plea. It was not surrender. It was something else. It was understanding. "We did not know. We see you now. You are like us." Then the signal cut out. A heavy silence settled over the bridge. Lin turned to Richter, a rare uncertainty in her expression. "What the hell does that mean?" Richter exhaled. His hands were shaking, but not from fear, from adrenaline, from something deep inside him, a primal part of him that had been waiting for this war his whole life. He met Lin's gaze. "It means," he said, voice a whisper, "they finally understand what it means to be hunted." And for the first time, the Nemesis knew what it was to feel fear. The Black Sky Armada has struck. But what did the Nemesis mean by their final message? Could humanity and the Nemesis be more alike than we think? Let us know your thoughts in the comments below. And don't forget to like and subscribe to HFY Genesis for more epic war stories. Heartrophic, the once mighty Nemesis Armada, the unchallenged apex predators of the stars, was gone. Their fleets, their weapons, their war forms, reduced to ash by the Black Sky Armada. The Accord had always feared humanity, called them too reckless, too aggressive, too dangerous. But now the great galactic powers trembled because the Nemesis had been unstoppable, and humanity had stopped them. Across the Accord's core worlds, from the floating spires of Velmari Prime to the orbital palaces of the Sashan Enclave, every broadcast was the same. The horror played in endless loops. Nemesis warforms, once titanic and unkillable, slaughtered by human firepower. The once living capital ships, dark, pulsing organisms of war, shattered into drifting corpses. And then, the footage that no one could look away from, the Butcher of Orion, Admiral Cole Richter. His eyes were dead, cold, unrelenting. The transmission had been captured from a Nemesis distress signal, their last desperate call before the human fleet annihilated them. The recording was clear. Surrender? Richter's voice echoed across the stars. He stood on the bridge of the HSS Vengeance, blood splattered on the hollow table in front of him. He leaned forward, expression void of sympathy, of hesitation, of mercy. "You don't understand." He turned to his comms officer. "Send a message back. 2 words. No survivors." The galaxy recoiled. The Nemesis had never been given a choice before. They were the hunters. They were the apex species. They had never begged for mercy, and humanity had given them none. In the heart of the Galactic Accord Council, the ruling species of the galaxy convened. The chamber was a sea of voices, hushed, fearful, disbelieving. "They wiped them out," whispered Chancellor Virex, her feline-like tail twitching anxiously. Her golden eyes darted over the broadcast again and again, as if unable to comprehend what she was seeing. "This is genocide," murmured Supreme Arbiter Telvanos of the Rillic Union, his bioluminescent tendrils dimming in horror. "We feared humanity's aggression, but this is something else." High Executor Caventhos of the Dailari Dominion slammed a clawed fist against the table. "They have exceeded the Nemesis in brutality." His mandibles clicked in agitation. "The humans were desperate, yes, but now they have won. And yet they still kill." For years, the Accord had kept humanity at arm's length, fearing their potential. Now it was no longer a possibility. It was a reality. Humanity had become something worse than the Nemesis. They had become the reckoning. The execution of a species. The war should have ended at the Battle of Orion's wake, but Richter did not stop. The Black Sky Armada did not stop. Nemesis vessels that had fled the massacre were tracked. Their escape routes were calculated. Their hiding places were eradicated. For the first time, the Nemesis learned fear. It did not save them. At the edge of the Sagittarius expanse, the last Nemesis stronghold was discovered, a writhing, planet-sized bioship, its core pulsing with the remnants of their species. It was their homeworld. The HSS Revenant launched a single payload. The Worldbreaker warhead descended. The planet writhed, screamed, collapsed into itself. The Nemesis were no more. Earth, Mars, the lunar colonies, the Belt, the Accord core worlds. Every species, every sentient being, received the same message. A transmission from Earth, from humanity itself. Richter stood on the bridge of the HSS Vengeance, staring directly into the hollow camera. His face was emotionless. "You abandoned us." His words were slow, deliberate. "You let them come." The galaxy listened. "And now, you will never forget what we are capable of." Then the transmission cut out. The silence that followed was deafening. The Butcher's reflection. Richter stood alone in his quarters, staring at the empty glass in his hands. The room was dark, the only light coming from the distant glow of Earth outside his viewport. He had done what was necessary, hadn't he? The war was over. But then, why did it feel like something else had begun? His reflection in the glass was unreadable, cold, the face of a monster, or the face of a man who had simply done what no one else would. He exhaled and set the glass down. It didn't matter anymore, because whatever came next, humanity would be ready. The war was over, but the galaxy had not yet decided what to do with its victors. The Nemesis had been eradicated, completely. The Black Sky Armada had left nothing behind but silence and drifting wreckage. Humanity had done the impossible, and the rest of the universe was terrified. The Accord's ultimatum. The Galactic Accord High Council convened in secret. The Grand Chamber, suspended above the glowing clouds of Velmari Prime, had once been the center of diplomacy and order. But today, there was no order, only fear. A massive holodisplay flickered, showing the last recorded transmission of Admiral Cole Richter. "You abandoned us. You let them come. And now, You will never forget what we are capable of." The words lingered in the air like a toxin. This is why we never trusted them," growled Supreme Arbiter Telvanos, his bioluminescent tendrils curling with unease. "They are too dangerous, too willing to burn everything to achieve victory." Chancellor Virex, usually calm, was visibly shaken. Her feline-like tail lashed behind her as she addressed the council. The Nemesis were unstoppable, yet the humans stopped them. That should be a warning to us all. Across the chamber, High Executor Caventhos, leader of the Dylari Dominion, slammed his fist against the table. They executed a species, Virex, an entire species. His mandibles clicked furiously. They have proven they are capable of destruction on a scale even the Nemesis never imagined. If we do nothing, we will be the next victims. A murmur spread through the council. They were right to be afraid. Humanity had crossed a line, and now the Accord had to decide what came next. The meeting on Titan Admiral Cole Richter stood at the head of the war table, deep within Titan Command. The reinforced walls, designed to withstand planetary bombardment, felt too small for the conversation that was about to take place. On the hollow display before him, the faces of the Galactic Accord's representatives flickered into view. This was no request for diplomacy. This was an ultimatum. "Admiral Richter," Chancellor Virex began, her voice sharp, "the Accord has convened, and we have come to a decision." Richter said nothing. He already knew where this was going. "The Black Sky Armada is to be dismantled immediately," she continued. "All Dreadforge-class weaponry and Worldbreaker warheads are to be decommissioned. The Human Defense Network will be placed under Accord supervision to ensure there is never another incident." Silence. Then Richter laughed. It was a cold, humorless sound, the kind of laugh that didn't come from amusement but from disbelief. "Let me get this straight," he said, leaning forward. "You abandoned us. You let the Nemesis slaughter billions. And when we handled it without you, now you want to put us on a leash?" Caventhos bared his fangs. "We cannot allow a rogue species with unchecked military power." Richter's voice dropped to something dangerous. "Rogue species?" He gestured toward the display. "Where were your fleets when Orion burned? Where were your diplomatic resolutions when the Nemesis started turning entire worlds into graveyards?" Virex interjected. "Richter, this is bigger than humanity. The galaxy must have order. Your actions have destabilized." "Order?" Richter's fist slammed against the table. His patience snapped like a frayed wire. "The only order that mattered was survival, and the only reason any of you are sitting there, alive, comfortable, untouched, is because we did what you were too afraid to do." The council chamber erupted into overlapping arguments, a storm of voices in a dozen languages. Richter let them shout, let them debate, let them try to rationalize their cowardice. Then he silenced them with 6 words. "You want to make us stop?" The chamber grew deathly still. "Try." 1 week later, Accord warships arrived at the Sol system's borders. Thousands of vessels representing dozens of species gathered along the Red Line, the designated boundary of human-controlled space. Richter stood aboard the HSS Vengeance, staring at the incoming fleet through the viewport. Commander Lin stood beside him, arms crossed. "They really think we'll just roll over for them?" Richter smirked. "They're betting we won't risk an interstellar war." She exhaled. "Are we?" Richter turned to his comms officer. "Open a transmission to the Accord fleet. I want it on all channels." A moment later, his voice echoed across the entire battlefield. "Human space is closed. Cross this line, and you will find out firsthand what happened to the Nemesis." The response came almost immediately. A single Accord vessel broke formation, a test, a power move. Richter didn't even hesitate. "Fire!" The HSS Revenant launched a Charybdis-class kinetic round. No warnings, no negotiations, 1 shot. The Accord warship vanished in a flash of nuclear fire, A heartbeat of silence followed. Then, slowly, the Accord fleet began to withdraw. One by one, their warships turned away. Richter exhaled. They blinked first. Lynn shook her head. They'll be back. Let them, Richter said. His eyes were unreadable. The line has been drawn, and this time, humanity was ready for whatever came next. Humanity has drawn the line. Will the Accord dare to cross it? Should Richter have accepted their terms, or was his defiance the only option? Let us know in the comments below. And don't forget to like and subscribe to HFY Genesis for more epic tales of war, vengeance, and survival on fire. At the edge of Sagittarius A star, the supermassive black hole at the center of the galaxy, the last remnants of the Nemesis made their final stand. Their warforms, once vast and unrelenting, now twisted and desperate, clustering together like a wounded animal baring its teeth. And surrounding them, the Black Sky Armada, humanity's finest, humanity's last. The HSS Vengeance led the charge, its engines roaring against the backdrop of a war that had all but ended. But there was one final task, one final brutal act. Admiral Cole Richter stood on the bridge, staring at the writhing mass of Nemesis warforms that clung to the event horizon. They had fled here as a last resort, hoping the crushing gravity of the singularity would deter pursuit. They were wrong. Humanity did not hesitate. Not anymore. The cost of victory. Admiral, we have full targeting locks. Commander Lynn's voice was steady, but beneath it, Richter could hear the weight she carried. They aren't fighting anymore, she murmured. They're hiding. Richter's eyes remained locked on the viewport. Not good enough. Lynn exhaled sharply. Sir, this is extermination. Richter didn't flinch. They started it. Across the bridge, the tension was thick, suffocating. The crew had been with him from the beginning, from the first desperate battles at Orion to the mass execution at the Red Line. They had fought. They had won. And now they stood on the precipice of something greater than victory. Annihilation. A decision that could never be undone. The final transmission. A flicker. A pulse. Then, a voice. It was the same one from the first surrender message. The same guttural, unfamiliar, twisted approximation of human speech that had stunned the bridge back at Orion's wake. We see you now. Richter's breath slowed. We understand. For the first time, the Nemesis spoke not as conquerors, not as hunters, but as something else, something almost afraid. You are like us. A silence stretched across the bridge. Lynn turned to Richter, searching for something in his face. Doubt, hesitation, regret. She found none. They say we're like them, she said softly. Richter's jaw clenched. His hands were steady. His next words were absolute. No, he said. We're worse. Then he gave the order. Fire the World Breaker. The death of a species. The HSS Revenant launched its payload. The warhead descended, a sleek, obsidian spear tipped with the most destructive force humanity had ever created. There was no detonation, no explosion. Instead, space itself collapsed. The fabric of reality twisted as the warhead's gravitational core unraveled everything in its wake. The Nemesis homeworld, a living organism the size of a moon, began to fold inward, its biomass stretching and warping as it was dragged into the singularity. The Nemesis screamed, not over comms, not in words, but in the way their ships convulsed, the way they tried to flee, the way their biological hulls ripped apart at the atomic level. The war was over, and now the Nemesis were gone. Aftermath. The bridge was silent. The hollow screen displayed nothing but an empty void. Where a civilization had once existed, there was now only the endless, swirling darkness of Sagittarius A star. Commander Lynn turned away. Some of the younger crew members averted their eyes. But Richter, he watched. He watched until the last fragment of the Nemesis homeworld was swallowed by the abyss. until there was nothing left to kill. Only then did he turn to his comms officer. "Send a message to all human forces," he said. His voice was steady, cold. "It's done. The reckoning of humanity." Back on Earth, back in the shattered remains of the Galactic Accord, the universe trembled. The Nemesis had been unstoppable, and humanity had erased them. A new fear spread across the stars, not of the Nemesis, not of invasion, not of conquest, but of humanity itself. Because the galaxy had made a mistake. They had thought the Nemesis was the greatest terror in existence. But the Nemesis had made a fatal miscalculation. They had chosen the wrong species to fear. And now the galaxy would never forget. Humanity has won. But what have we become? Was Richter right? Or has humanity crossed a line from which there is no return? The legacy of fire. The war was over. The Nemesis, humanity's greatest enemy, the galaxy's ancient terror, was gone. Every last one of them. Their homeworld, their fleets, their species, erased. But war does not end with victory. It lingers in the silence afterward, in the ghosts of the fallen, in the way the universe looks at you differently when you have become something it cannot control. Humanity had won. And now, the galaxy trembled. The aftermath. Admiral Cole Richter sat alone in his quarters aboard the HSS Vengeance, staring at the empty glass in his hands. He had meant to pour himself a drink, hadn't moved. Outside his viewport, Earth loomed in the distance. Home. Yet, for the first time in his life, he wasn't sure if he belonged there anymore. A quiet knock at the door. "Enter," he said, his voice rough from exhaustion. Commander Lin stepped inside, hesitating for just a moment before she spoke. "The Council has confirmed it. The Accord has officially withdrawn from all negotiations with humanity. They're afraid, Cole." She exhaled. "They're calling us monsters." Richter smirked. It wasn't humor. It wasn't even anger, just acceptance. "They should be." Lin frowned. "Is that what we are now?" Richter didn't answer. Instead, he leaned back, eyes scanning the stars beyond. "What's the latest from High Command?" She hesitated. Then, "We've mobilized. The Black Sky Armada is now the largest independent fleet in the galaxy. The colonies are reinforcing defenses. The war factories on Titan are still producing dreadnoughts at full capacity." Richter nodded slowly. "They're expecting retaliation." Lin's voice dropped to a whisper. "They're expecting extermination." The fear of humanity. Across the galaxy, the stories spread. The Velmari Senate locked down its home system, cutting all trade routes with human colonies. The Rilak Union fortified every border, preparing for a war no one had declared. The Dailari Dominion pulled its forces from all non-essential sectors, consolidating its fleet in case the humans came next. No one knew what humanity wanted now, because if they had been capable of erasing the Nemesis, what stopped them from doing it again? The Accord sent its final transmission. Humanity is to remain within its borders. No further expansion, no further aggression. Violate this decree and you will be seen as an existential threat to the Galactic Order. A warning, a containment attempt. Richter read the message once, then deleted it. Because there was something the Accord still didn't understand. Humanity had already been abandoned once, already been left to die, and now, they had no reason to listen. The shadow of Orion. At the edges of known space, deep within the ruins of Orion's graveyard, something moved. The wreckage of Nemesis warforms drifted in the darkness, twisted remnants of their once mighty fleet. Silent, lifeless, but not all of them. Deep within the husk of a shattered dreadnought, a pulse flickered, a heartbeat. Something lingered, something that had survived. The Nemesis were gone, but not all of them. And something else was listening, watching, waiting. The last message. Richter stood on the bridge of the HSS Vengeance, staring at the hollow display as the final transmission from Earth's High Command rippled across every human fleet. A single message, a declaration, not of war, not of peace, but of truth. We are alone now. No allies, no masters, no gods. We will never kneel again. The transmission ended. Richter exhaled, looking out into the infinite black. Humanity had drawn its line in the sand, and whatever came next, they would be ready. The war is over, but humanity's place in the galaxy has changed forever. Are they now the greatest power or the greatest threat? And what still lurks in the shadows of Orion? Let us know your thoughts in the comments below. Don't forget to like and subscribe to HFY Genesis for more epic sci-fi tales.